Welcome to the show, Lola Lunn. That's a lovely name, Lola Lunn.
Yes, it goes very well.
It sounds like you should be a film star, but I gather that your class is a spiritual social influencer. Tell me about that, Lola. What is a spiritual social influencer?
Well, it's kind of a name that got given to me, which I'm very proud of, because I read oracle cards and I connect with spirit. So, and I'm very into spirituality and auras and angels and all that sort of thing. And I think because I do it differently, so I kind of do it in like a blog style. So it's a bit more digestible than most spiritual people, I would say. So that's kind of why I got that coined, because a lot of people I think are searching for some spirituality, and I'm quite down to earth and relatable. So what you see is what you get. So that's why I think I got given that very prestigious title.
Very nice. So I'm just pouring myself a drink. Excuse me a moment. I forgot to pour myself some water before I started recording. So oracle cards, for those who don't know, please explain oracle cards.
Oracle cards are kind of similar to tarot, but more modern, I would say. So with oracle cards, they're more, there isn't many negative messages you can get from an oracle card. So it's a lot more positive. And so basically I do card spreads for people, and I try and connect them with maybe what they are looking for in love or in business, or and sometimes when I do card pulls, I connect with spirit, so I'm able to pass on messages from relatives of theirs. So oracle cards are similar to tarot but more modern, and so that's it's not as scary as tarot. Tarot could be quite scary, because it's like they've got like the death card and stuff. I don't deal with death cards, so I don't have to worry about that.
Right. So is that something that you do over the internet, or do you see people in person? How does it work?
A bit of both, actually. I do it mostly over the internet. I had card readers this morning across the globe. I did one in America this morning already. Yeah, so, but I do them in person within reasonable travelling distance, because I'm in London, so within a reasonable travel distance. But I find that, thank God for the internet, because it gives me the ability to extend my reach to people. So yeah, so
it's brilliant, isn't it? I can't believe things. I mean, I'm in my 60s now, and I can't believe that lots of my friends still haven't embraced, school friends still haven't embraced technology, and without it, we're lost, aren't we? We really can't.
I know. My business wouldn't have grown as quickly and as wide as it had without the internet. So I'm very happy to say it's about.
Marvellous. Okay, so tell us then about your book, because I understand you created an Amazon bestseller in February this year.
Yes, I did. I wrote a book. It's called The Day the Phoenix Rose, and it's a collection of stories from women who have overcome adversity to become successful. And when I use the term successful, I don't necessarily mean financially successful. I mean, in the grand scheme of life, quite successful. And a lot of the stories were quite dark. There was a lot of abuse, sexual abuse. There was like financial abuse was a story that came up in it, which is an untouched subject. There was birth trauma came up in there, abandonment issues. Like, there was a lot of soul searching for people, I think, when they wrote. So I've got a group of women together who all wrote their own individual stories, and we put it all together and we released it on Amazon. And to be honest, we didn't even release it thinking anything of it. We just was proud to have a book out, and we wanted to raise some money for charity. So we picked the 4 charities that we were going to split the money between, and we released the book in February. And within the first, I think it was 2 weeks, it became an Amazon bestseller, and it was just an out of this world. And we did it all on our own. We didn't have a publisher. It was self-published. It was, do you know what I mean? It was completely off the cuff and released, and it was successful. And it was like, oh, okay, that there is a need for people to want to read these type of stories, because I think it gives people some hope, especially if they're in a dark place right now, that they may you can get out of it, and you can be successful however you however you measure success. You can be successful. So yeah,
absolutely. And again, another example of how fabulous the internet is.
yes.
Whoever would have thought we would be self-publishing, the way
Yes.
that we easily can do so today.
Yeah.
My first collection is coming out this year as well. I'm not sure when this recording is going to go out live, but we're expecting we're doing a virtual book launch in August, and for the book to be launched in September.
Wow.
2019, and we've got a collection of they're not all women, there's men in there as well. It's adversity to success and that sort of thing, but as you say, for people to write, which is extremely cathartic, isn't it, to be able to say in writing what maybe you'd like to say in person, but you're unable to kind of the words.
Well, for me, it wasn't even meant to be a book. I was sexually abused as a child, and I'd never really spoken about it. It kind of got a little bit brushed under the carpet, and it was really affecting me because one of my children was starting secondary school, and she reminded me at the same age, and it used to cause me anxiety. Really, I had panic attacks, and I didn't realise why this had all of a sudden started happening. I didn't realise why I was having panic attacks, why I didn't want her to leave the house, why I didn't want anything, and I didn't understand. So I started journaling. It's kind of how it started. And as I was writing, the whole story came out, and I was like, no, I'm going to share this with a friend. So I just shared it with one friend, and she read it, and she was like, you need to put this in a book so other people can read this, because it's quite powerful. And even my mum, bless her, she didn't even really know what had happened to me. She knew it had happened, and she helped deal with it, but she didn't know the details until she read the book, because I'd never opened up about it. So it's kind of opened up a lot of channels of communication, even just within my family, because obviously my husband's read it, my parents have read it, my sister's read it, my two older daughters have read it. So now it's like I can talk about it without having that shame on my shoulders. Like I can tell them exactly what happened, and that I know it wasn't my fault, etc., etc. And it's opened up so many channels of communication between me and other people, that now I can say I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. It's not, I don't wear it as a badge of shame anymore. I actually kind of own it, and I'm able to say, look, this has happened to me, it wasn't my fault, and I survived it, and I'm here to share my story with everyone. And it's quite nice to have that freedom to be able to do that. So yeah, it was a great experience for me.
Absolutely, and it's, as I say, it's so empowering, isn't it, when you can you use the word own, when you can own your stuff. Stuff happens to us all the time, doesn't it? All sorts of stuff. Life gets in the way. We have hopes and dreams, but then something happens that knocks us off, and then suddenly we kind of take on all this guilt or shame or whatever it is, when actually it's just life stuff. Not everybody's as resilient, are they? You're a resilient person, but not everybody is, cloth. So I think reading stories is a very good way, both for the person to write to kind of get closure, as it were, or start a conversation, but also for those who read it to know that they're not the only people.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So when I ask people on the show, I always ask them for a couple of songs. So you've chosen the first one you've chosen, I'm going to select is Prince. I Would Die For You. So why did you choose that one, Lola? I think that's part of your story, isn't it?
It sounds a bit weird, the song, but it really isn't. When you play it, you'll realise it's quite an upbeat song, and it always reminds me of my relationship with my mum, and it also reminds me of a lot of relationship with my kids. So yeah, the song's quite an upbeat song, and my youngest son, he was a surprise child. I wasn't meant to have any more, and he came along, and we had quite a rough time with not the pregnancy so much, but the birth of my son. And before we found out he was a boy, I decided that if he was a girl, that I was going to call him Paisley Rain. And if you know anything about Prince, his home is called Paisley Park. Mm-hmm. And his most famous song is obviously Purple Rain. So we was going to call her Paisley Rain. Obviously, he's a boy, so we didn't call him that. But there's always been a bit of an affiliation with Prince and me. Growing up, even through my worst times, Prince would get me through it. that was it. Prince was my go-to records as a kid to get me through stuff. So that song is quite poignant in my life about how I feel about my kids. So yeah, that's why I picked that one, because it's quite important to me, that because I did have a rough time with my son. We had birth trauma. So with that, we both actually lost our lives the day he was born, and both had to be resuscitated. So it kind of made that song a little bit more special, because I did literally die to bring him into the world. Luckily, I was resuscitated.
Gosh, that's quite a story in itself. Have you written about that?
And that's why I'm still here. So yes, I've started writing about it. It's going to be released in a book later this year by Jessica Prime. She's getting a book together of a collection of birth trauma, because it's not something people talk about, unfortunately. And as a mother of 4, it definitely wasn't something that I was expecting to experience, because I never experienced it in any of my other births. I had really easy births, to be honest, the rest of them. And when it came to the last one, everyone was like, oh, it's going to be super easy. He's baby number 4. Like, literally, he should just fly out. It should be so simple, in and out the hospital. And I ended up being 18 days late, so dangerously overdue, in hospital for 3 days. And like, it literally was the worst experience of my life. And I don't think many people, especially when they have multiple children, talk about it, because we're expected to just take birth as it comes. Like, whatever happens, happens, and we're supposed to accept it. Whereas there was a lot of negligence at my birth. Like I said, I had to be resuscitated. My son had to be resuscitated. My husband now suffers trauma and anxiety because of it, because on the day he was told he was going home without a child and possibly a wife. So it was quite a devastating experience. And because it was my 4th child, I feel like no one, do you know what I mean? Like, no one thinks that that's a possibility, that you can suffer birth trauma with multiple children. I think they think, okay, first child, yeah, you can have a bad experience because you don't know what to expect. Whereas I've had pretty good experiences. My first child was born within 33 minutes of my waters breaking, and she was here, easy peasy. My second daughter was quite easy. My first son was very, very easy. He had the most tranquil birth I could have ever experienced. You know, there was Christmas songs playing in the background, and I was left to just birth in peace and quiet, and it was beautiful. And then when my 4th son came, it was a bit like, okay, this is going to be super easy. You know, like, you're going to be in the hospital 10 minutes, have a baby, go home. And it was nothing like that. And I think that no one talks about birth trauma and thinks that it affects people. And it does. And it might not affect you straight away, because it didn't with me. For about a good 3 weeks, I thought, oh, that was just how some births go. And then I realised that I had birth trauma and I have PTSD thanks to that birth experience. So it was very important to me to get it written as a multiple mum, to let people know that it can happen at any point, and that it's just as important to care for those mums that have been through birth multiple times as much as it is a first time mum. So that's why it was important to me to get it out there.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't know this when we first started talking, but we're in the same book. I've also contributed a chapter. Yes, in the book. Yeah. And I'd never heard of birth trauma. It was only when she started talking about it. I've had 2 children. Each of them have been very difficult children at births, which is why there's 12 years gap between my daughter and my son. And I never realised, it's only sort of recently when Jessica's been talking about birth trauma, I'm thinking, actually, I've had 2, not had 1, I've had 2 birth traumas. And I also died. I had an out-of-body experience and so on. So I think, well, actually, yeah, perhaps I should write about it. And I found as I was writing about it, it was really quite cathartic and also humbling, and, you know, giving me more things to be grateful for. That, you know, I got through it. Here I am, and I've got 2 lovely children.
Yeah, definitely. Like, for me, it was like, I feel like at the time I was treated like I was being unreasonable for expecting a decent birth. I was made to feel quite guilty, and you know, I don't particularly remember the birth experience because I was not with it mentally. I just remember thinking to myself, this is how people die in pain. And I've got a really high pain threshold, so I'm not a wuss in any shape or form. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to come home from this, and I'm not going to see my other children. And that is quite scary, a scary thought to have. And when they blue lighted it, and they, about 20 people rushed in the room, my poor husband, bless his soul, ran out of the room and rang his mum and told him that the baby had died. So when she came to the hospital, she was expecting to see her passed away grandchild. And my poor mum was in the room screaming and screaming. And when they walked in, my son was fine, perfectly healthy. He's a beautiful, nearly 2-year-old boy now. And to think that he had to go through that, and it was because I was quite neglected by the NHS, to be honest. They gave me different due dates. They left me, like I said, I was dangerously overdue. And I just feel like it is important to recognise a birth trauma, and that it's not okay for some of the things that happen during birth, that it's not okay. And like you said, some people don't even know that they've experienced the birth trauma. Like, they don't even know, they just think that that's part and parcel of giving birth, because we're taught that giving birth is a horrible experience, and it's not. I mean, with my first son, I had a beautiful experience of giving birth to him. Like, everything that could have gone right went right, and he came into the world to the Christmas song, When a Child is Born. He came on his due date. I didn't have any drugs. It was perfect. And yes, there are experiences like that, and that is how birth should be. But going through birth trauma, that is not normal at all. And I think the more people that speak about it, and I have to thank Jess for bringing this to light. I feel like it's really, really important that people realise that, if anything during birth makes you feel uncomfortable, or, you feel isn't right, trust your instincts, because it's not part of the experience. It really isn't. So I think that it is important for people like Jess, who can give a voice to the rest of the world and the rest of the people that are contributing to the book. It's important that we can all be voices for those that haven't had the greatest experience, and then maybe make more people recognise that they perhaps didn't have a great experience either. So I feel very privileged to be part of it, to be honest.
Wonderful. That's really nice. So the other song is Sunflower by Post Malone.
Yes.
So another unusual name, Post Malone.
Yes, he's a kind of new-ish rapper, but his song it's not like insulting like most rappers. My eldest daughter is obsessed with Post Malone, obsessed. And with my oldest daughter, I was a teenager when I had her, and we had a bit of a rough start in the beginning. Her biological dad left whilst I was pregnant. And I was homeless, and I lived in a hostel, and we had a rough start in life together, me and my older daughter, and there has been a lot of attachment issues with that, because we did have a rough start. And Post Malone actually brought us together, as we have basically, for her birthday last year, I bought her tickets to see Post Malone, because I knew that this was going to be like her dream, like, oh my god, my mum's the best. And I bought her tickets, she had no one to go to the concert with, so I went with her. And that day was, I would say, the turning point in our relationship. We went from just me being a naggy mum and her being a stroppy teenager to being like the best friends that we could be. And she fully gets why I am the way I am with her, like why I want her to do well. Because like I said, I had her, I'm 17 when I had her, and at the time I was at to her, like, I really want you to do well at GCSE, I want you to follow your dreams, I want you to do these things. I'm not being naggy, I'm like being like, I didn't get to do it, so make sure you do. And I think that she gets me now, and it's thanks to Post Malone. And then the reason that I picked that one song is because it reminds me of my youngest son, my birth trauma son. So it's kind of like my oldest and my youngest, that song reminds me of them both. And it reminds me of the growth that I've had as a parent, to be honest, from a teenage mum not having a flipping clue how to bring up a child, you know, living in hostels. And we moved 7 times in a year. In her first year of birth, we moved 7 times. And so we had a really rocky start. And now as a parent, I'm quite a confident parent with my son. I'm quite, you know, I don't listen to outside advice because I'm a mum and I trust my instincts and I know what I'm doing. So that song kind of, to me, it represents the growth I've had as a mum. So that's why I picked that one.
Brilliant. 2 very good choices. I'm glad you told me that it's not a difficult song, because sometimes I have to check them before they go on air, because some of them in the past have contained swearing, and of course we're not allowed to play songs like that. But
I don't. No, it doesn't. I play it in my house with my children. It is, you know, PG friendly.
Brilliant. Okay, but it's been lovely talking with you, Lola. How do people get hold of you for your oracle readings?
I have a Facebook page. I'm available on Facebook or Instagram. If you look me up, it is Celestial Child, and my Instagram is Celestial Child Official. You can find me on there, and I have a booking link. You just book, and then I email you the details, and then that's it. It's really simple. So, and I also blog on my Facebook page. So for anyone who's looking for any spiritual guidance or just something to help them through the day, there's articles on there and angel numbers and all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Brilliant. Celestial Child.
Yes, that's me.
Wonderful. Okay,
Brilliant.
It's a pleasure talking to you, Lola.
You as well. Have a great day. Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.